Trump is facing a new test with Russia that is right out of the Putin playbook, according to the Business Insider. Moscow retaliated against new sanctions over the weekend by demanding that 755 diplomatic workers, many of them American, be cut from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and from U.S. diplomatic missions in St. Petersburg and several other nations. The reprisal was far from surprising. Obama issued new sanctions in December before he left. And Congress had been debating the legislation for months before recently passing it, leaving Russian President Putin ample time to contemplate a response. The White House said in a statement last week that President Donald Trump intended to sign the bill, but there was no indication that the legislation pleased the president, who said he still harbors doubt about whether Russia was behind last year's hacks on the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman John Podesta. So that is concerning what the Business Insider says. Now I want us to go to I believe I have a soundbite here to get us more on track, for us to understand what this is all about before we go any further. So let's see if we can play the soundbite here.
Back 2 diplomatic properties and cut State Department staff in the country by hundreds of people. The U.S. has an embassy in Moscow and consulates in St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, and Vladivostok. The Foreign Ministry wants the U.S. to cut what it calls diplomatic and technical employees. It will also seize a Moscow warehouse and a vacation house complex that the United States Embassy uses. But why is this happening now? On July 27th, the Senate voted 98-2 to impose new financial sanctions on Russia. The bill would require President Trump to notify Congress before changing any Russia sanctions policy. Lawmakers then have 30 days to block the president from implementing those changes. Trump could still veto the bill, but Russia's foreign ministry didn't wait to see what he would do. In a statement, it said the new bill, quote, clearly showed that relations with Russia have become a hostage of the internal political struggle in the U.S. If Trump does sign the bill into law, Russia says there will be more retaliation. Those measures could target U.S. commercial or trade interests tied to Russia.
Different options are on the table, and consideration is being given to all sorts of things, both symmetrical or asymmetrical, to use a very popular word in the world of diplomacy.
The Russians can't change us or significantly weaken us.
In December, President Barack Obama threw 35 Russians described as intelligence operatives out of the United States and seized 2 Russian diplomatic compounds as payback for Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. At the time, Russian President Vladimir Putin held off on responding, apparently hoping he'd get along better with President Trump. But with Russia's latest move, it seems the honeymoon for the 2 world leaders might be over.
Putin orders cut of 755 personnel at U.S. missions. What is taking place here is that the White House has decided to pass, or to try to pass, a sanctions bill. And I say the White House, but it's really the Senate. And this was a sanctions bill that was already propagated by the Obama administration. And the issue with this is that it goes further than what we're being led to believe, and we're going to talk about all that right now. But what is happening is that it says here, according to Newsweek, it says here, does Russia want a Cold War? Putin removes U.S. diplomats, touts military warships and submarines. Russian President Putin has responded strongly to increasing U.S. sanctions of Russia following the nation's attempt to influence the result of the 2016 election in favor of President Trump. Putin announced Sunday that 755 American embassy and consulate staff from the country was going to be removed. According to Putin, he said, I decided it's time for us to show we do not intend to leave the U.S. actions unanswered. Putin is very upset because these sanctions are against him. We've been sanctioning North Korea.
Yes.
But now we're basically punishing Russia. And the excuse is that, because of the so-called meddling that Russia did during the 2016 presidential election. But there's something deeper into this, and it has to do with oil. We're going to get to that right now. Just want to, I'm just kind of building it up with some of the headlines here, okay? We have another headline here, and it says here, Russia, according to, I have to remember, according to USA Today, Russia sanctions fuel new Cold War. It says here, the drive to put more sanctions on Russia might feel good, but fueling a new Cold War can only propel the United States in the wrong direction. It's time to turn away from a collision course, not step on the gas. Whatever you think of Putin, or Trump for that matter, they are the presidents of the world's nuclear superpowers. Piling sanctions on Russia means escalating tensions, and that's extremely dangerous. So there is some false narrative. In other words, a false story that we, the United States, the Congress, the Senate, has to sanction Russia the same way that they're sanctioning North Korea, and even putting Iran in the mix, because again, they're titling the bill Russia, Iran, and North Korea sanctions bill. And it's all for different reasons why they're sanctioning them. Obviously, North Korea, they're doing sanctions because of nuclear capability. Iran, I have to double check as to why they're sanctioning them. I don't know if they're following the accord that they had originally established for their nuclear capability. And now they're sanctioning Russia, not obviously because of nuclear capability, but because of their so-called possible involvement, which has not been confirmed yet, in the 2016 election that they claim made Hillary Clinton lose. But is that, again, the true story? And the answer is no, and I'm going to prove that, and I'm going to say why it matters as far as biblical prophecy goes, okay? Experts believe, here's another headline right here, according to the TASS news agency, experts believe U.S. bill on anti-Russian sanctions may trigger a new Cold War. So now we have more talk of war. Here, Russia, Vladimir Putin, thought that putting Donald Trump in the highest seat in office, I say putting him, but really having him be there, because he's not the one who voted for him, obviously. The Americans did. But he was hoping that Trump would be in the office so that relations can be at a decent, you know, in a decent state, right? Because you have Putin constantly state that if Hillary Clinton won the presidency, there would be a third world war. He didn't want third world war, so he said basically, you know, in so many words, get Trump in. But now we're being told that relations with the U.S. and Russia have now even gotten worse now so far than under Obama, okay? Wow. It is wow. It says here, the draft law and the new sanctions against Russia adopted by the U.S. House of Representatives will bring these countries back to the Cold War. Head of the Moscow State University's Department for International Organization stated at a roundtable devoted to the effects of anti-Russian sanctions bill. Until this time, the Russian leadership tried not to respond to the challenges thrown down first by the Obama administration and then retained by the Trump administration. Trump has failed to repair the ties. The sanctions bill will most probably be approved, which will inevitably bring us to the Cold War. This is stunning because here you have I don't know if Trump knows this or not. I really believe that Trump may be, I don't know if he's getting, I mean, he's being advised. He has not yet, from my understanding, made the decision to actually sign off on this sanctions bill. But this sanctions bill, already Russia is already, again, they're being proactive in releasing 755 of workers.
So without even Trump signing it?
Without him yet signing it. He's already put orders to cut 755 personnel at U.S. embassies in Russia. And you know, it's funny because I looked up what 755 would mean in the Bible. If there was any, you know, correlation or significance to the number. We're not we don't do numerology here. At times we get people emailing us saying, you know, what does it mean when I constantly see the number 1111 or 23 or some kind of, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like that. I'm not, you know, but we know that numbers are important in the Bible. There's a book devoted to numbers called the book of
numbers.
The book of what?
Numbers.
Numbers. So numbers is important to the Lord. But we're not into numerology, okay? But I was gently pressed to just simply look to see if there was anything with regards to 755. Because again, we have I mean, 755 personnel. Why 755, right? Anyway, according to the Hebrew lexicon, the number 755 is a sense of bending the knee. So I thought that was interesting, that here you have Russia, before even Trump signed the sanctions off, in approval, okay? And mind you, folks, if Trump signs off on the sanctions bill, this Russia, Iran, North Korea sanctions bill, he's gonna be doing Obama's work. That was Obama's baby, and it just never did not get complete, which will be very weird. Okay, but here we have Putin proactively saying, "I'm not even going to wait for you to sign in hopes that you don't sign. I'm already putting the orders to release 755." But if we looked at this in a spiritual sense, he's already put the orders of bending the knee.
Bending the knee.
In other words, either forcing the U.S. to bow or cutting the U.S. off at the knees, meaning that the relations between the U.S. and Russia will literally go back to Cold War levels. There will be no more warmness, not even close to it.
Cold.
So the number is significant in and of itself. I just thought that would be interesting just to bring up.